Hi there, it's February the 3rd, and today we continue our progress through the good news of Matthew, and we're looking from chapter 22 and verse 34 through to chapter 23 and verse 12. The Pharisees, the party that defend the purity of their traditions and of the Torah, have heard that Jesus has outfoxed the Sadducees and has actually spoken very powerfully in terms of the Torah and resurrection. Of course, the Pharisees believe in resurrection, so they come and they test Jesus again. And this time they're asking Jesus something which every Jew would ask at the time of Jesus. It was one of the great points of discussion. What is the greatest commandment? The Jews believe there were 613 mitzvot, commandments, instructions in the law, directives, and they want to know which is the one that if you keep it, this is going to be the clincher. And Jesus says something which actually many Jews would have said at the time. That is, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your life, with all your soul, with all your strength. Interesting that Matthew, being a Jew, writing to Jews, uses the Hebrew formula of this. He just uses the three. Sometimes there's a Greek formula that adds in the mind, but actually Matthew's using the Greek formula here: all your heart, all your soul, your nephesh, and all your strength, and everything else. And then Jesus adds something from Deuteronomy, which is, and you will love your neighbour as yourself. And this was seen as the encapsulating the whole of Torah, the whole of God's instruction, the whole of God's directive for life. And then, and they agree this is a good answer. But then Jesus goes further and he says, "Let me ask you a question now." A great rabbi asking someone else a question, and the question he asks them is, "Look, the Messiah is David's son, isn't he? He's the descendant of David. This one who's promised will be in the line of David." Yes, he says. So in Psalm 110, Jesus is saying, why does David call this one my Lord? Why is David saying that his descendant is going to be my Lord? And what he's saying is that the Davidic line will bow to the Messiah as king. And the Pharisees are foxed also by this. They can't answer it. And it's interesting that it says at the end that they couldn't explain this, and so they leave Jesus alone and they don't dare to ask him any more questions. Jesus' wisdom has been seen as outclassing the Pharisees themselves. But then Jesus turns to the crowds at the beginning of chapter 23 and he says something very powerful. He says to them, look, these Pharisees are actually, they call themselves guardians of the Torah. They're also guardians of all of the traditions of the fathers that they add and trying to keep the Torah so meticulously. But all they're doing is externalizing things, and not only that, but they're putting heavy loads on people, heavy loads to have to carry. They had gone into the minutiae of what represents work and what doesn't represent work on the Sabbath, and how you can keep things and how you can get around things in the Torah as well. They were very good at that. And also Jesus says they love to be seen, they love to demonstrate their religious appearance. So they make their boxes on their heads, the phylacteries. Not that these things were bad or wrong, but they were using them as decoration, as saying these things are bad. These things are bad because they are trying to show off their religiosity. Not only that, but and also they're extending the tassels on the end of their prayer shawls to make them look even more religious, even more prayerful. They said, but actually they're all outward. They're looking for celebrity. They're looking to get the best places at the feasts. They're looking for their purity and religion to be classed as something of celebrity. But Jesus says, that's not what I'm about. He says, and he actually says, it's not about titles. So often people delight in titles. So Ravi is a title that actually means my great one. It's obviously my teacher, but it means my great one. They were wanting to be called Ravi, my rabbi, my great teacher, or my father. And Jesus says, don't do that. Don't get into titles. Don't get into describing people by their titles. In fact, whoever's going to be greatest in the kingdom will be the servant of all. Whoever is going to be greatest will not be interested in their position, in their appearance. They will be interested in the other. They will be interested in giving themselves away. This is what it is to be great in the kingdom, not to be focused on myself and how I look, but to be focused on the other, constantly giving ourselves away in self-donation. And this is what we seek to do today. We're constantly seeking to give ourselves away just as Jesus gave himself away. Let's seek to do that today on this February the 3rd.